Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is Monday. I hope you're all doing well. It is the game review. Nottingham Forest 0, Everton 1 on Saturday evening. A third straight away win on the spin for Sean Dyche's Toffees, which takes Everton all the way up to 12th in the Premier League table. Oh wait, no it doesn't. It still sees us sat at 18th with only 7 points, despite the fact that the Premier League's official Twitter accounts were quite vocal in tweeting about how Everton have won 3 away games on the spin, which is ironic considering their table suggests that we haven't even had enough points to win 3 games, let alone 3 away from home on the spin. We all know the current Premier League table is fake. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't count for anything. There's no point looking at it. There's no point trying to decide where we are and where we're going to be and who we can catch. It's a load of bollocks at the moment. The most important thing is that we continue to improve and Everton continue to win games of football, because that's the only way we're going to get over and be able to put this sort of feeling about the points deduction behind us. We shouldn't put the points deduction behind us because we should continue fighting for what's right, and what's right is that points deduction, well, ideally is wiped completely off, but certainly reduced, because we all know and we're all in agreement that 10 points is an absolutely ridiculous penalty for the situation that Everton have found themselves in. However, what we do need to do is not allow it to affect us, not allow it to affect our performances, not allow it to affect the mentality, and not allow it to affect the momentum either. And I think it did that last week. I'll be perfectly honest. I know some people will say, oh, well, you know, we were playing Manchester United and we had chances, and on another day maybe we score those chances and it's a different conversation. Quite possibly, yes, but I'll be perfectly honest. I genuinely do believe that the performance against Manchester United was hindered because of the pressure added after the points deduction. I think it felt like an Everton performance from the early months of the season, when there was pressure on the team and when there was pressure on the manager, because we were playing well, we were creating opportunities, but not only were we not taking those opportunities, we were then going on to lose those games that we should have been winning, and the game against Manchester United very much felt like that. So I can't quite tell you, and I think I said this in the instant match reaction, I can't quite put into words how relieved I am, that we come away from Saturday with a big 3 points. And it was a big 3 points, as we spoke about in the preview. Had Nottingham Forest have won that game, they'd have gone something like 12 points above Everton, which, again, isn't entirely impossible to catch considering we're only in December. But if there's a 12-point gap between any team in any position in the league table, it's often extremely difficult for that gap to be completely closed. Of course, it will close over time. It might end up being 6-7 points by the end of the season, but it's tough to close a gap that is that great. And Nottingham Forest are a team that are just on the edges of sort of being in that safe area themselves at the moment. So it was absolutely imperative that we didn't lose that game on the weekend to come away with a win. I think it shows the strength of the squad. I think it shows the unity of the squad, and I think it shows just what a good job Sean Dyche actually is doing. And that isn't me saying that coming, walking back with me tail in between my legs and my head down because I've criticised him before. Listen, I'm a very straightforward Evertonian. I will criticise the manager if I believe he's done wrong, and I believe that he's made poor decisions, and I will praise him when I believe he's done right and he's made correct decisions. I've always been the same with any manager that Everton have never had. I've never blindly criticised somebody for no reason because I had a personal dislike for them, and I've never blindly stuck up for a manager for no reason because I like them. The way I see it is, it doesn't really matter if you're a likeable character or you're not. You've got to be doing what's best for Everton Football Club and managing that team to win games of football, and Sean Dyche wasn't doing that at the start of the season, and I had fears. And obviously Everton improved massively and started to pick up some wins, brilliant wins on the road, Brentford, West Ham, Palace. We had a couple of dominating wins at home as well against Bournemouth and Burnley. And then once we were hit with that points deduction, it was a huge fear of mine that it would take this team multiple weeks, if not months, to be able to pick themselves back up physically and emotionally, I suppose, and get that first win back. Obviously, after the international break and after the news had broken that we'd had 10 points taken away from us. And like I've said multiple times before, you can sit there and tell me all you like about how the players are still focused and they know what the aim is and they know what the goal is and nobody's mentality has changed, etc., etc. Doesn't matter who I hear that from, whether it be Sean Dyche, whether it be the players themselves. I just can't have that. They're human beings, and at the end of the day, as a human being, they will have been affected exactly the same as what we were as fans, and we all know how massively it affected us. So to get that win so soon after, obviously returning back to football, yes, ideally it would have been last week against Manchester United, but to get it this week in a difficult game away from home against a side that are in and around the same position as what Everton are, I think it was absolutely fantastic. And as I said, it just shows what grit and determination and desire that these players have and that these fans have, that these players have for this football club and for the fans, and the desire they have to want to get back out of this situation, even though it's not their fault that they did it. Even though they'd done the hard work, they'd worked hard, they'd put in the good performances, they'd won the games, they'd kept the clean sheets to get out of this position. And the fact that they're back in it is through no fault of their own, but yet they still want to dig deep, want to work hard, want to battle and want to get out of it. And that win on the weekend was absolutely fantastic. And do you know what? I found myself over the weekend sort of sitting back and looking at the league and some of the teams in the league from a little bit more of I suppose, an outside looking in view, watching some of the other teams that are in and around where we are and watching some of their games and just seeing how they perform and what their level is. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, I'll read out now the bottom 10 teams in the Premier League table. Chelsea, Brentford, Palace, Wolves, Fulham, Forest, Bournemouth, Luton, Everton, Burnley, Sheffield United. Now, you might laugh at what I'm about to say, and you might think I'm taking the mick. You might think I'm just overly excited because we've won a game of football. You might think I'm just in a good mood because it's nearly Christmas. But I genuinely, and I mean this when I say it, I genuinely believe Everton are a better side than every one of those teams I've just mentioned. Now, have we got better individual players? Maybe not necessarily. Certainly when you look at teams like Chelsea, you've spent £1 billion over the last 12 months because that is sustainable, isn't it? Maybe a couple of those teams have got standout players that are a little bit better than what our standout players were. But as a team, as a unit, with the manager doing what he's doing, the players listening to the manager's game plan and seemingly working with the manager and understanding the manager, I think we are the most complete side out of those bottom 10 teams. I really, really do. You could argue Chelsea because of how much money they've spent and the quality that they've got at their disposal, but certainly below Chelsea, Brentford onwards, I think had we have not had the points deduction, I would have been fairly confident Everton would finish above every single one of those teams this season. I really would. And I'm not saying we'd have pushed for Europe or we'd be fighting at the top end of the table. We probably still would have finished maybe 11th, 12th, something like that. But I do genuinely look at those teams. I mean, I watched Fulham the other day, and yes, they scored 3 at Anfield, but to concede 2 in the last 2 minutes of the game is absolutely dreadful. And I remember Everton doing it against Newcastle at Goodison a few years ago, and I remember leaving the game thinking, we need to have a really, really hard look at ourselves, And I think Fulham need to as well, because that was embarrassing yesterday. Absolutely embarrassing yesterday. And I just look at all of the other teams in and around those areas, and I'd fancy Everton every day of the week to beat those teams away from home, and that's saying something considering how bad we've been away from home for the majority of my lifetime. But it just further sort of... it further proves the point that this current Premier League table is an absolute waste of time looking at, because it's not real, it's fake. It's absolutely not real. I may as well go and make one on Twitter and deduct Liverpool 30 points because I hate them, and they'd be sat at bottom of the table with 1 point. It's as real as what that would be if I went and made that on Photoshop and put it on Twitter. It isn't real whatsoever. It's fake, it's false, it's not a accurate representation of how well Everton have done this season, how well this manager has done this season, how well this team has done from being in 2 consecutive relegation battles, and not only being in 2 consecutive relegation battles, by the way, let's just amend that sentence, because, it's easy to say, oh, Everton were in 2 consecutive relegation battles. Everton were a side that a lot of people had going down for the majority of those 2 seasons. There was a lot of fans of other football clubs last season who were convinced Everton would be relegated. There was a lot of Evertonians who were convinced Everton would be relegated. Me and me included. At times last season, the season before, similarly. And to come from that to a side that, for me, is comfortably better than at least 6 or 7 teams in this league, maybe, if not more, 10, as I mentioned before, is it deserves huge credit. The manager deserves huge credit, and the players deserve huge credit as well, because you know what? The majority of those players that have picked themselves up and that have ultimately pulled themselves together and become a better team and a stronger unit and a more complete side and a more comfortable side, the majority of those players were here for the relegation battle last year. A lot of them were here for the relegation battle the year before. Of course, we've brought in a new player, a few new signings, but not to be disrespectful to those new signings or to play down their impact on this football club, because I'm sure, they will all have their opportunity, and I'm sure they will all come good at some point. But when you look at the players Everton have signed this season, Ashley Young, Danjuma, Yusuf Chamiti, Jack Addison and Beto, with the exception of Jack Addison, who you could argue because he's had a lot of game time recently, none of those signings have had a huge impact on the team this season. None of those signings have had a huge impact on the way in which Everton have played. Certainly not directly on the pitch. Maybe Beto's had a massive impact because it took the pressure off Dominic Calvert-Lewin, which internally meant that it was easier for him. But directly on the pitch, out of every one of those new signings, as I said, maybe you could argue Jack Addison, but you could also argue that he hasn't had as much of an impact as you would have liked. So it's even more admirable, and it's even more, as I said, it's even more impressive that these players are where they are, or where they should be. As I said, forget the current Premier League table because it doesn't mean anything. It's even more impressive because it's the same squad of players that we all sat here, week in, week out last season and said, oh my God, these players are going to go down, they're terrible, they're not good enough, they're this, they're that, they're the other. It's the same manager that we all had doubts about whether or not he was good enough, whether or not he could keep us up. Not only did he keep us up last season, but he's now turned us into a team that, as I said, for me, had we have not been absolutely shafted by a corrupt organisation, I'd be sitting here now on the 4th of December saying, yeah, we've got absolutely nothing to worry about this season. And I think the majority of us would as well. I mean, if you look at some of the stats of recent 7 wins in our last 11 competitions, I seen a stat yesterday that said that Sean Dyche has only lost as Everton manager away from home at Anfield, at Villa Park, at Old Trafford, and at the Emirates, is it? Something like 5 games. He's lost twice at Anfield, once at the Emirates, once at Villa Park, and once at Old Trafford, or something like that. Again, there's only been 4 stadiums that Sean Dyche has lost at as Everton manager. And a lot of those games that we've obviously gone away to, we've picked up some points in as well, which is fantastic. But yeah, 7 out of the last 11 games in all competitions, Everton have won, 4 clean sheets in the last 8 matches as well. And that is for a team that, last season didn't look like they could buy a win away from home. We won 2 games all season last season. All season we won 2 games away from home. We obviously won at Southampton, and we won at Brighton, one very early on in the season and one very late on in the season. Similar the season before, we won at Brighton early on in the season, and then we won at Leicester late on in the season. 2 wins all season away from home. Everton have won 3 games, 3 away games in their last 3 away appearances. We've won 4 already this season, which is matching the last 2 seasons' tallies, and we're only in December. Yes, the home form needs to improve. We all understand that. We all admit that. We all understand that it's seemingly much more difficult for Sean Dyche to organise these players at Goodison Park and set these players up at Goodison Park. But I think it's easy to forget the fact that prior to the the points deduction, and prior to the international break, we'd put in a good performance against a good Brighton side and should have won that game, comfortably, by the way, and should have had 2 penalties on that day. We're not giving either of them. And, prior to that, we'd beaten Burnley comfortably at Goodison with no problem whatsoever, and we'd beaten Bournemouth comfortably at Goodison with no problem whatsoever. So it's easy to, say, oh, well, the home form is absolutely dross and it's absolutely terrible. The home form isn't anywhere near as good as it should be, and it needs to improve, absolutely, but it's also nowhere near as bad as it was in the opening couple of months of the season. In our last 4 home games, we've beaten Bournemouth, we've beaten Burnley, we've drew with Brighton in a game that we should have won. And, okay, we've lost to a Manchester United team through a wonder goal, a penalty, and a counter-attack goal after we missed 112 chances in the first half, and we would have been 4 or 5-0 up, and the game would have been over in the first half. So, even the home form, I think, whilst I accept and I agree, it needs to improve and it needs to be better, I still also think that it's not as bad as maybe it is being perceived, and I think we're not a million miles away from being able to book good performances in a Goodison as well and win games there. So, the manager deserves huge credit, and I will give him huge credit because, as I said, I'm one of the first to criticise him, and I'm one of the first to say, when I think he's done wrong and when I think he needs to change something or he needs to improve something. So I'll be the first one to credit him when I think he's done well, and I think over the last 2 months, 3 months, he's done absolutely incredibly well to get Everton to the position that they deserve to be in, not the position that they currently are. And as of the players have done unbelievably well as well to pick themselves up, to believe in the manager. And for the first time in a long time, I actually feel like Everton have got a manager that knows what he's doing and a set of players that understand what the manager wants from them. And that is so refreshing, because for a long time, Everton either had a manager that knew what he was doing but didn't have the players to be able to implement it, or we had players that had quality but the manager just didn't have a clue. So to have finally a manager that seemingly understands what he's doing and understands the task at hand, and also players that are able to perform the way the manager wants to perform and get results from those performances is absolutely huge, and it deserves a massive amount of credit. And I actually think Saturday's win of Forest is the most important win of the season thus far. I really do, and the reason for it is because I've said this a couple of times, but I think it needs emphasising again because I'm not hearing enough people talk about it. The longer we went on post points deduction without a win. Now, I know people will say, oh yeah, but Cam, the points deduction has been appealed and, Everton have lodged an appeal, etc. We don't know whether or not that appeal will be successful. We can guess, we can sort of hope, because obviously of all of the outcry from the points deduction and the fact that people, not just Evertonians, but people within football generally, are disgusted at the fact that it's a 10-point deduction for what it was. But we don't know whether it will or won't be, be reduced, or whether it will or won't be scrapped. For all we know, they might come back and say, no, we've looked at it again and we think it should stand, and there you go. So we do sort of have to be in a frame of mind of that we need to earn those 10 points back, because we may not get them back. But also, like I said on Saturday, for me, if I'm the manager now and I'm the players, I'm not even bothering looking at the Premier League table. I'm not paying any attention to it. I'm not looking at when Luton win games and worrying then, or when Sheffield United win a game, or when Burnley win a game, or when Bournemouth win a game. I'm not even focusing on any of that. I'm acting mentally as if we are 12th in the Premier League and nowhere near the relegation battle, so it doesn't even matter how those teams get on, because I think that's the only way we can evade the pressure this season. We don't deserve to be where we are in the Premier League table, and we all know that. So there is no reason why we should look at where we are in the Premier League table and be worried about it, or allow it to create pressure, or allow it to create negativity, allow it to create worry, anxiety, because we all know we shouldn't be down there. It's a little bit different if Everton had picked up 7 points from 14 games because we'd lost the majority of those games. Then it would be a little bit different. The pressure is there because you're down there, because you deserve to be down there. We don't deserve to be down there. So it's absolutely pointless looking at it and thinking, oh my God, Burnley have won today. Oh my God, Luton have won today. Oh my God, Sheffield United have won today. I don't think it benefits anybody, players, fans, manager. It doesn't benefit. It doesn't benefit anybody anyway. Even if you're down there because you're not very good. But it certainly doesn't benefit anybody when we're down there through no fault of our own, and we're down there because we've had a points deduction that we don't deserve, and that, quite frankly, is absolutely disgraceful. So, for me, I know personally, I'm not focusing on the Premier League table again this season. I don't care about it. I don't care where it shows Everton, because it's not real. I could go and make a Premier League table and put Liverpool 18th, put Man City 19th. I could go and put Burnley top. And people would go, well, that's just made up, isn't it? Exactly the same as this current Premier League table is. It's made up. It doesn't mean anything. And therefore, there shouldn't be a focus on it. And it shouldn't be allowed to create pressure or anxiety. Even when we lose a game, even if we turn up on Thursday against Newcastle, and as I said, again, will be an incredibly difficult game of football. One that Everton certainly can win, but will be an incredibly difficult game of football. If we lose that game, then there's no reason why we all should run home and look at the Premier League table and see what it's done for us and whether or not Luton have won that night or Burnley have won that night, because it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything at all. So for me, the way we continue, in the form that we're in, and the way we continue to improve week in, week out, as we have been doing for the last couple of months, is to just ignore the Premier League table. Ignore where we are in it, or where it tells us we are. Ignore the results and the performances of other teams, and just do what we're doing. Focus on the next game. And focus on the next game as if we are 12th, 13th in the table, with no worry about relegation. Because let's be honest, although I understand people saying it's unlikely, and it's this, that, and the other, Everton are unlikely to go down this season, but there's a possibility, because we're down there, we've had the points taken off us, and ultimately, of course, there's a possibility. And the Blues says fans will, though, Cam, they're far too reactionary. I don't care about the Premier League table. I'll react to Everton losing and give my opinions on why Everton have lost and why I think Everton shouldn't have lost, etc., etc. But I'm not asked about where we are in the table. I don't care. It's not real. If Everton are relegated this season, it's because the Premier League have wanted us to be relegated. And as far as I'm concerned, Everton could, finish the season on 98 points and win the league. And the Premier League would deduct every single one of them and send us down, because they want us to be relegated. So it's pointless even worrying about it, because regardless of what we try and do, they're going to try and attack us, because they are a corrupt, defunct organisation who are not capable of running a football association at all. And they run the worst league in the world. So it doesn't worry me, and I think the important thing is it shouldn't worry the players or the manager either, because it's not a true representation of where they should be and where they, in my opinion, are. Because as I said, it's that win should have taken us to 12th, and we should be sitting here now, not even mentioning relegation, because it's not even a subject. But ultimately, that's not the case. Because that's the way it is, isn't it? But like I said, I thought the win on Saturday was absolutely huge, and for me, our biggest of the season so far, because not only does it give us a win, and ultimately, not only does it provide us with that confidence and that momentum, but also it pardon me, it completely alleviates all of the pressure that was put on us because of that points deduction. It completely eliminates all of that worry and stress and anxiety about when we're next going to win a game. Are the players affected by the points deduction? The media would have been absolutely loving that. Had Everton have lost on Saturday, the media would have been lapping it up. Have Everton been affected by the points deduction? Are Everton going to go down this season? Everton beaten again, etc., etc. They would have absolutely loved the thought of Everton going 3 or 4 weeks losing, each game, and falling further and further down the table, because they could have used it as the mentality's being affected, etc., etc., etc. To win that game on Saturday, as I said, to put that behind us, to put that pressure behind us, to put that anxiety behind us is absolutely fantastic. And now we can move forward and continue to perform the way in which we're performing, and keep winning games of football, because we've done that many a times this season, and we deserve to be much, much higher than what we were. And, I'm reading things from BBC Sport this morning saying Everton's points deduction could be a blessing in disguise. And for me, it's just absolute bollocks. it's absolute bollocks to suggest that a Premier League football team who have been in a relegation battle for the last 2 seasons on the bounce finally have dragged themselves out of that relegation battle and are now fairly comfortable in the Premier League could receive a 10-point deduction to put them back into the relegation battle, and it could be seen as a blessing in disguise. It's nonsense. As I said, don't listen to anybody that tries to spin the whole this is a good thing for Everton because it's the best season they could have a points deduction, or it's a blessing in disguise. They're talking bollocks, and if it was their team, they'd be crying their eyes out and hoping that the Premier League were disgraced, etc., etc., etc. It's bollocks. It's a load of bollocks. It's patronising is what it is. It's patronising. Oh, well, just accept it because, you'll stay up anyway, so just accept it. That's sound. Let's give Liverpool a 30-point deduction because they'll stay up anyway. So, we may as well give them it then, and they'll just have to accept it because they'll stay up anyway. Bollocks, absolute bollocks, and I've got no time for anybody that entertains that, it's the best season to have it, or, oh, it's a blessing in disguise. It's a nonsense chat. But anyway, let's get into the game on Saturday because that's what we're here for. That's what we all watched on Saturday. That's what we were all extremely happy about. The Blues, I know you were very pessimistic going into it. Didn't think we'd come away with anything. So I'm sure you were pleasantly surprised on Saturday evening. But yeah, as I said, the manager, an hour before the game, he puts his team out, and I don't think there was any particular surprises. We'd heard rumbles in the weeks, that Dominic Calvert-Lewin wasn't going to be fit for this one. The manager said himself in his press conference that he hadn't signed with the full squad, with the team. So we sort of knew that this was going to be Beto's opportunity to show what he can do, to show what he's capable of. Obviously, Amadou Onana also not available either. I was a little bit surprised to see Ashley Young in there. Not because I am surprised to see Ashley Young starting for Everton, because at this point I think the manager has clearly chosen Ashley Young as his number one fullback or number one right back. So it didn't surprise me or shock me in any way, shape or form that he was in that starting 11. It was more that I thought Ashley Young was so bad against Manchester United that maybe the manager would give an opportunity to Nathan Patterson or even bring back Seamus Coleman, who obviously is fit and available now. He didn't. The more and more that happens, the more and more that I'll be worried, because I don't want to talk too negatively in this live stream, because there's no real need to talk negatively in this live stream. Everton have won a game of football. It was absolutely brilliant. And it's exactly what we needed. But I do fear that the longer and longer that right-hand side persists as Young and Harrison, the more and more teams are going to target it. And I do think that I do think that Nottingham Forest targeted it on Saturday. I just don't think they were very good at all. And I don't think they are very good, Nottingham Forest, and that's me point. You look at Nottingham Forest, they are 6 points behind Chelsea, who sit in 10th. They are 2 points behind Wolves, who sit in 13th, 3 points behind Palace, who sit in 12th, and they are fucking horrendous. They are absolutely horrendous, and they were absolutely horrendous on Saturday evening. So it wasn't highlighted as much on Saturday because of how poor Nottingham Forest were. But, for me, I just think that right-hand side needs to change. And I'll be honest, I think Jack Harrison's performances are being affected by Ashley Young. I don't think Jack Harrison is anywhere near the level that he could be. And I'm not just blaming Ashley Young for everything here and making him a scapegoat. But I do think, had you have a bit more of a progressive right back behind him, somebody that will overlap him, somebody that is quick enough to be able to get back and forth, confidence enough to be able to get back and forth, I think you would see a better Jack Harrison and a more improved Jack Harrison. So yeah, that is something that worries me. I'll be honest, that is something that worries me. Not that he was particularly awful on Saturday, Ashley Young. I thought he was okay. I don't think he was great. I don't think he was amazing. I just think he was all right. But I feel like whenever we talk about Ashley Young, we're either talking about him being all right or we're talking about him being absolutely horrendous. We very rarely sit here and talk about him being good. So yeah, that is something that worries me. But as I said, Everton start the game. As we've done multiple times away from home already this season, we look comfortable, we look confident, we look calm, we look collected, we look cool, we don't look worried, we don't look panicky, we don't look like we're troubled being away from home. We look like we are comfortably content with going away from home now and winning games of football, and that is huge because, as I said, for so long, for my entire lifetime really. And I know people will say, oh well, what about Carlo's year and COVID, etc., etc., etc. Completely different because there was no fans in stadiums, so playing away from home for any team was effectively the same as playing at home. You're just in a different location. You're still stood on a football pitch with nobody around you in the stadium. So completely different circumstances and situations in Carlo's opening season, in Carlo's COVID season. Other than that season, when was the last time Everton looked this comfortable away from home? This comfortable going away to teams that are in and around us, by the way, West Ham, Palace, Brentford, Forest, and winning those games without any real trouble, any real issue, any real problem. And it's so refreshing to be able to see that now. And as I said, Saturday was another example of that. I thought the first half we looked comfortable in. We weren't amazing going forward. I think we missed Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I think Beto... Listen, I like Beto because he is a little bit... He's not your usual typical centre-forward, is he? He's a little bit all over the place. He's a little bit unorthodox. He's a little bit different. And I like him for that because, a lot of my favourite Everton strikers growing up and a lot of the Everton strikers that I remember fondly were players... Pardon me. Take a leaf out. Were players that were a little bit unorthodox, a little bit different. They weren't your typical sort of centre forward who played the same as everybody else. They were different. They were a bit mad, but they were unorthodox, and they'd score your goals and they'd win your games and they'd get you important moments. Players like Dennis Strachwalesi, players like Umar Niasse of recent, who weren't the best players in the world and often look like they never knew how to kick a football, but still were there in big moments to win your games and pick you up points. And I do feel like Beto will be one of those players. It's just going to take time, and it will take time. It will take him a year at least, I think, to settle into this league, settle into the pace of the league, the way in which the Premier League is played, and the way that the defenders are, the physicality, the general, I suppose, play of this division is much different to anything that Beto will have ever dealt with before in his career. So I do think it will take him time to settle in, but once he settles in, I think we've got somebody that could be really beneficial to the football club. He's big, he's physical, his presence is quite obvious. Yes, he's unorthodox, but he's sometimes he uses that to his advantage. He's clearly skilled. We've seen him in the cup come on against Burnley at Goodison and pulled out one of the best assists I've seen at Goodison for a long time. So he's clearly got the skill, he's clearly got the ability. It's just about putting it all together. And yes, he wasn't great on Saturday. He had a couple of opportunities in that first half that he should have done much better with. We know that his shot where it fell to him, certainly he should have done much better with. You've got to at least get that on target. To not get that on target for me is really poor. He had one in the second half as well, which was a little bit difficult, more difficult. But he should have done better with it. But yeah, he's somebody that I think the more and more game time he plays and the longer he's here, and the more and more he trains with the likes of Dom and other players that are more used to this league and this division, the better he will get. And I don't think we should be writing him off after his first 90 minutes for 2-3 months, something like that. Ultimately, he put himself about, he worked hard, he battled. Was he great? No. Was he what we expected? Probably not. Was he as good in front of goal as we needed him to be? No, but it still doesn't mean that, all of a sudden he's absolutely terrible and he should never play for the football club again. That's not how it works. And plus, he should have had a penalty as well, because I know some people are going to pick up on Nottingham Forest penalty, but as the Blues has quite rightly said, Willy Bolly, is it Willy Bolly? Does Willy Bolly play for them now? I think it's Willy Bolly. Willy Bolly has basically signed the ball when jumping up to try and win a header for against Beto, and the referee has just waved it away and not given anything. It was a blatant handball, it was a clear handball, and it was a clear penalty. So yeah, again, not great, but also, he's going to take time to settle into this league. He's going to take time to ultimately to get to the level we need him to be at. And I think I said it on Saturday. Pardon me, I'm really, really full of cold today. I don't know why. It's literally just kicked in as I've started the live stream. Obviously, my nose has started running and my throat has started to get congested just as I press record. So nice one for that body. It's hit. Anyway, yeah, as I said, he's going to take time. And I think I said on Saturday, who was the last Everton striker that we brought in that hit the ground running instantly? Even Lukaku take time to settle in. I know he scored goals instantly, but I mean, before he was the sort of finished product, he took, quite a while. Dominic Calvert-Lewin obviously took a while. I can't remember the last Everton striker we had where we signed him and instantly he was what we needed him to be, and was that for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. It doesn't quite work like that. So, yeah, he will take time. He'll take time to settle in, and once he does, hopefully we'll be able to see his real quality, because, again, we could do with that when Dom is absent in moments like Saturday. But I thought we were relatively in control in the first half. I thought we looked relatively comfortable. I didn't think we were under much pressure. Nottingham Forest had a couple of opportunities, I suppose. They had a couple of half chances. They had a couple of moments, where they got forward and they put a little bit of pressure on us, but nothing that was anything that was to be worried about. Jordan Pickford was not really called into action in the first half. The two centre backs were relatively comfortable. The full backs were relatively comfortable. As I said, I don't think Ashley Young was absolutely unbelievable, but I also don't think he was awful either. He looked relatively comfortable in the game. He looked like he was, he didn't have any issue with defending their attack. So, yeah, it was a comfortable first half. As I said, we had opportunities to put the ball in the back of the net. Beto has his one that we've just spoken about. Obviously, Dwight McNeil has one cleared off the line as well, which is really, really, really unlucky. I was sort of sitting there thinking at half time, is this going to be another repeat of last week? Are we going to, come out in the second half, rue the missed opportunities? They're going to get a goal on the break, completely undeserved, and we're going to lose this game as well. But it wasn't to be. We come out in the second half and we got better. I don't think we were great in the first half. I think we were just comfortable and in control. But I think because they were so bad, or certainly me as an Evertonian, I expected more from the team because of how bad Nottingham Forest were. I don't, as I said, I don't think we were bad in the first half because I think we were in control and we were comfortable. But we should have been ahead in that game. They were absolutely terrible. They offered nothing. They offered nothing in that game from the first minute to the last minute. And the fact that we weren't ahead in the first half was disappointing for me. So players needed to step up and players needed to do a bit more. Dwight McNeil needed to step up and do a bit more. Jack Harrison needed to step up and do a bit more. Obviously, the midfield needed to step up and do a little bit more as well. And they absolutely did. That second half was fantastic. From an Everton point of view, I thought James Garner was absolutely unbelievable. I thought Dwight McNeil was brilliant in that second half as well. I thought Garnegay was absolutely outstanding. And I thought everybody just worked that little bit harder, tried that little bit more, battled that little bit more, and the output was much better in that second half. We obviously come out, as I said, we had another couple of close opportunities, close moments, and then the goal comes to force to Dwight McNeil, cross in by Jack Harrison, force to Dwight McNeil, and it's an absolutely wonderful strike. At this point, it's vintage Dwight McNeil, isn't it, really? It's vintage Dwight McNeil at this point for the ball to fall to him in that position, in that area in the pitch, and for him just to lace his boots through it and rifle it into the top corner. It was an absolutely wonderful goal. Brilliant finish, and exactly what he's deserved, because he struggled this season, Dwight McNeil. He obviously has struggled since his injury to get back into the team and obviously to settle back into the team and get back to that level that he was last season, because he was without a doubt Everton's best player last season, and he struggled to reach those sort of heights again this season. But I thought he was absolutely fantastic. I thought he was absolutely fantastic again on Saturday, and he was back to the Dwight McNeil that we need him to be. He was back to the Dwight McNeil of last season, and his goal just shows that. Should Nottingham Forest have had a penalty? Maybe, but it doesn't get given for us. So, and I know people will go, oh, well, that doesn't mean it wasn't a penalty. It absolutely does mean it wasn't a penalty, because Dwight McNeil wasn't given a penalty against Brighton, and neither was Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and both of those were penalties. So this wasn't a penalty either. Plus, as the Blues point out, we should have had a penalty in the same game for a blatant handball that wasn't given. So, as far as I'm concerned, no. And I think if you're a Nottingham Forest fan and you are complaining about that and you are trying to use that as why you should have got something out the game, I think you should be a bit embarrassed, because you were absolutely horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. So, yeah, no issues with the penalty. And then, as I said, once we'd got the goal, it was fairly comfortable from that point on, because Nottingham Forest were never really in the game. And even when they got the goal, even when we got the goal, and you may have thought, oh, might this give them a little bit of a boost? Might this give them a little bit of confidence? Never really seemed to do. They just seemed flat, as always. They seemed like they weren't particularly interested. They just seemed really, really poor, Forest. And they did have a moment towards the end of the game, 80 odd minute, where obviously Alanga's got it on the edge of the box and he takes the shot, and Pickford does really, really well to run out. Pickford does brilliant, by the way, to run out and to close that challenge down, because had he have not done that, Alanga would have almost certainly got the shot off. And from that position, on goal, it's likely that goes into the back of the net. So for Jordan to rush out off his line that quickly, get to the ball that quickly, and intercept it, is a brilliant, brilliant bit of goalkeeping for me from Jordan Pickford, and he deserves a huge, huge amount of credit for that. And it's won us the game again. It's another moment from the goalkeeper that has directly won us a game of football. How many of them have we spoke about in the last 12 months? Jordan Pickford making moments where we sit back and we go, do you know what? That has won us this game today, and that was another fine example of that. And yeah, as I said, we see the game out, and it was an absolutely fantastic win, and one that ultimately will do wonders for us and our confidence. And I think individual performance wise, Dwight McNeil was back to what we know he can be. Mikalenko was absolutely fantastic again. I thought both the midfielders, James Garner and Garner Gay, were absolutely brilliant, breaking the play up brilliantly. Fantastic performances by them too. And we deserved it. We utterly deserved it. And had we have not won that game, we'd have all been sat back saying, how have we not won that game? That's an absolute disgrace. So, to come away with it with 3 points is absolutely huge, and hopefully we can continue that momentum and confidence and take that into Thursday, and then obviously Sunday as well. 2 really, really difficult home games against 2 decent sides, and sides that will without a doubt cause us problems, but there's no reason why we can't turn up and we can't win those games. And as I said, for me, the focus now needs to be completely away from the Premier League table and just on the games that we've got ahead and winning those games that we've got ahead, because if we do that, then we won't need to worry about the Premier League table. Because it doesn't mean anything anyway, does it? Let's be honest, it's absolutely nonsense. So there you go. Another fantastic away win for the Toffees. Another brilliant performance as well, and one that is huge. And as I said, for me, could be the catalyst, and for me is the biggest win of the season because of when it has come and the situation that Everton are currently in at the moment. So yeah, there you go. Massive win. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. We will be back. Can't even speak. We will be back over the next few days with the game preview to that Newcastle game, so look out for that one. If you have enjoyed this one, please hit that like button. It does only take a second, and don't forget to subscribe as well. That would mean a huge amount to me. Up the Toffees. Thank you all very much for watching, and we'll see you after.